Yo, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for watching. I've got you guys an update on Tropical Storm Milton. Alright, so Tropical Storm Milton just formed a little bit earlier today and now is expected to make landfall as a Category 3 major hurricane in Florida. We're expecting landfall near Miami, Florida, around Wednesday of next week. Alright, so this is brand new information we just got from the National Hurricane Center. We also do have a lot of activity in the rest of the Atlantic. So far, it doesn't look like a threat to the land as far as the United States goes, but other impacts for other areas are also expected with these tropical systems. So we've got all the details coming right up, right? So thank you for joining me here on this Saturday night. We have a lot to talk about in this video. We're going to go over pretty much all the latest details that we got on Milton, and also on just what's going on in the rest of the Atlantic, and just why we've been seeing a huge uptick in activity. All right, so it's been a minute since I've been with you guys. It's been about 8 days, I believe, so just over a week since I last was with you guys. So I took a huge break after Helene. Helene really wore me out. So before I start this video, I just want to say that if any of you guys are tuning in from wherever Helene made impacts, I just want to apologize for what happened. Obviously, it was just an absolutely incredibly devastating system. The damage in Florida was unrecognizable, but also in many towns and just cities across the southeast. I mean, some towns were entirely flooded. We saw many dam failures. I mean, the death toll is well over 200 right now. So, just really sad stuff to see. So, pretty heartbroken since that happened, but we just gotta make sure that everyone's staying safe. And this is not a video to freak everyone out about this upcoming hurricane, but this is definitely a video to keep you guys prepared for all the possible scenarios that could play out, because what happened with Helene actually teaches us a very important lesson that just seeing the forecast doesn't exactly mean that's what's going to happen. You can definitely have impacts that are far worse than what's expected. Right, this was not expected at all to be anything like what we saw in the southeast, in the Carolinas, in Tennessee, northern Georgia. The rain was supposed to be bad, the flooding was supposed to be bad, but this is easily catastrophic, devastating flooding. Just one for the record books. So we just got to make sure that everyone's aware that a situation like what we saw with Helene is definitely cannot be ruled out. It's not likely, and it's not something that is supposed to happen with hurricanes, but just from what we saw with Helene, we really want to make sure that if it somehow happens again, which unfortunately, if that were the case, that would be pretty unfortunate. But if that were to actually happen, we just want to make sure that everyone would actually be prepared. All right. So starting out here, take a look at the current satellite loop for the North Atlantic. So right now we've got three systems. We're tracking three named storms currently in the North Atlantic. Right now we've got Hurricane Kirk up here in the North Atlantic. Right, this is a Category 3 major hurricane at the time of recording this video. I believe sustained winds at around 120 miles per hour. This is still a sub 950 millibar low. So still a very, very strong system. This is a high-end Category 3 storm. Just was previously Category 4, but now is moving pretty far north, so starting to see some cooler waters. All right, a lot of this really, really dry, bone-dry air is just, moving its way throughout this region of the Atlantic, and is trying to get wrapped around into the circulation of Kirk. But as of right now, Kirk is strong enough to withstand just the steering currents that are trying to pull this dry air into itself. So it's able to fight that off, but not for long, because it will end up weakening out enough, hopefully, for this dry air to kind of kill it off and weaken it. But this is not going to be a threat to land as far as the as far as what the United States is concerned. But Europe is actually expected to get hit by the system, which we will talk about briefly in the end of the video. So stay tuned for that if you are interested. Down here in the MDR, we do have finally an MDR storm. Feels like we haven't had one of those in months. But yes, we do have tropical storm, or I believe this is actually Hurricane Leslie at this point. This is a Category 1 hurricane. I believe it's expected to be a Category 1 at peak intensity, but not a threat to land for anybody. So this is just expected to be a fish storm. So these are our two North Atlantic systems. This is the big one. This is the one that's going to be catching the storylines, the headlines here. All right, this is Tropical Storm Milton. All right, so right now this is a tropical storm, but it is expected to be a major Category 3 hurricane as it makes its way over to Florida. So as of right now, you can see it just looks like a ton of moisture, and that's pretty much what it is. It's just a lot of moisture that's circulating here. It strengthened enough. It took its time. It really did. We had this system for a long time. The tropical wave, we were monitoring it. And it just really wouldn't do anything really until the very last second. It just all of a sudden began to really get its act together, and now we've got a named storm. So Milton is actually expected to undergo rapid intensification as we get into later into the weekend, and then into the early days of next week. So we really just got to watch, and see what this does, over its time in the Gulf of Mexico. And one thing to note, it's got a very interesting and weird direction. We usually don't see hurricanes move directly west to east, but this is just going to go exactly like how the flow aloft is, and it's just going to be pretty much going exactly west to east. And we usually don't see that with hurricanes. And with this typical hurricane, or with this strength of a hurricane, we usually see it want to gain latitude, but that's not what Milton is expected to do at this point. So this is pretty much all we've got in the Atlantic right now. So we're gonna move on here to the current National Hurricane Center forecast homepage. You can see right now we have our three named storms. We got Kirk up here, 949 millibar low, 120 mile per hour maximum sustained winds, moving north at 20 miles per hour. So it's pretty much just going to be going up into the North Atlantic. Let me get this off your screen. Apologize about that. But yeah, this is just going to be going up in the North Atlantic and out towards Europe. And once again, we'll talk about that briefly in the later portion of the update. Now you've got Leslie down here, a Category 1 hurricane at this point. All right, Leslie right now has sustained winds at around 80 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure at around 985 millibars. So a pretty strong storm, getting pretty organized out there. A little bit more strengthening is expected, but nothing too much. Really a lot weaker than we initially expected. We actually thought that this storm was going to be a major hurricane, pretty similar to like what Kirk was like. And what we saw with Kirk, but we're expecting this to be just around a Cat 1, Cat 2 hurricane as it moves over the Atlantic waters. And now you've got Milton. All right, Milton is a tropical storm right now with sustained winds at 40 miles per hour, so a very weak system now, but it is just starting out here, so it's going to strengthen pretty quickly and pretty soon as it moves its way a little bit longer across the Gulf of Mexico. But you can see right now we've got movement as of right now, just north-northeast at 3 miles per hour. So right now it's moving in pretty much a general direction like this, and it's just starting to, slowly but surely, turn itself east, and that's when we're gonna start to see it really gain strength and just get going here. So moving on here to the satellite loop, this is what Milton looks like up close. And I apologize in advance if I mix up these names. All right, it's pretty hard when you have 3 hurricanes all at once. Obviously Milton isn't a hurricane yet, but when you're considering that Milton's going to be a major hurricane, you also have to talk about Kirk and Leslie. It's just going to get mixed up in my brain. So if you catch me doing that, just let me know in the comments. Just please don't be rude or anything. But I apologize for that if it confuses anybody. So right now, this is what the satellite is looking like for Milton. You can actually see it's popping off quite a bit of convection, really just looking like an average tropical storm starting out here. Got a lot of convection and pretty good circulation here. That's a pretty tight core that you've got there. Obviously, nothing like that yet. But this is definitely a strengthening system, organized system. That's still trying to get its act together. But you can see that you've got a pretty good train of moisture that's on the outside of the system. And this is actually just going to help Milton start to really get its act together and strengthen as it moves a little bit farther offshore. So, we'll really just have to watch what this does. And, we're hoping that the amount of intensification that it goes through is going to be limited. But obviously that could definitely not be the case. Considering that this is over some of the warmest waters on the planet right now. All right. So, take a look here at your current forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center. This is the official cone as of right now, latest information. All right, as you can see right now, we are expecting this to become a hurricane by 1 a.m. Monday. So this could be a hurricane as soon as tomorrow night. We're expecting this to become a Category 1 hurricane and pretty much move directly west to east here across the Gulf of Mexico. And then you can see it's starting to turn north. And then by Tuesday morning, we wake up very early Tuesday morning. This is a high-end Category 2 hurricane. And then by 1 p.m. Tuesday, we could have a potentially a major hurricane at this point. So that's a pretty big jump here. You can see we go all the way from just a Cat 1, very low on Cat 1 by 1 a.m. Monday. And then, fast forward exactly 24 hours, pretty much, and we've got a major hurricane on our hands. That is rapid intensification for you. And this could definitely be a very serious situation that we've got. But as of right now, this cone is massive. I will say that. I'm going to measure this out for you guys, but I just want to point out that so much can change with this because you have a ginormous, day 4 to 5 cone of uncertainty here. That the shaded area here or this dotted area, this dotted cone here. This is the cone of uncertainty. This is the cone that goes out 4 to 5 days, and this is where we don't have a great idea of where it's going to go. But this is the general idea. It's just so broad, so that basically shows that that they just want to put this out there so that they can get the word out to Florida that right now this seems like it's a very likely chance that we're going to see a major hurricane. But by 1 p.m. Wednesday, you can see we are expecting a major hurricane to make landfall in Florida, right around the Miami area, Tampa Bay. This would bring widespread impacts. This would be another $1 billion in damages kind of system here. But midday Wednesday, landfall, Category 3 hurricane continues through Florida. And then by 1 p.m. Thursday, this is still a hurricane as it's moving its way into the southwest Atlantic. All right, so a lot can change with this. A lot is going to change with this. So expect updates in the forecast. So that means that you should definitely be tuning in to this channel frequently because I will be trying my best to get you guys updates out as quickly as possible whenever new information comes in. But this is going to look a lot different from now to when the forecast comes for pretty much right around when this thing's going to make landfall comes out, if that makes sense. All right. So just to take a little bit of a closer look here, more detailed look, you can see right now the current information on the storm is still just a tropical storm right now with 40-mile-per-hour sustained winds. So here it is by Monday 2 a.m. right around middle of the night Monday. We got an 80-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane, and then this hits Category 2 by Tuesday. So middle of the night Monday into Tuesday, we could definitely already have a Category 2 hurricane. And then you get your major hurricane by midday Tuesday. This is 115-mile-per-hour sustained winds. This is the current forecast. But where does it hit Florida? Well, here it is right here. All right, you have Category 3 hurricane, 115-mile-per-hour sustained winds going right through St. Petersburg, going right through Clearwater, right through Tampa. This would fill up Tampa Bay. This would be just a devastating system. The storm surge with this, it would just bring all this. It would push all of this Gulf water directly into Tampa Bay, and you'd get big time storm surge into here. You get really really intense winds. You get easily major hurricane force winds in this pretty much this entire area. But I mean this would be a truly devastating system. But it's just scary to see because you already have your forecast cone forecasting a landfalling major Category 3 hurricane, but it's in arguably the most populated area of all of Florida. So that's why this is such a possible disaster. I mean, this is actually a very very real scenario that could play out. So as of right now, areas near St. Petersburg, areas near Tampa, Clearwater, pretty much this entire area needs to be on high alert. But you can't even go that specific at all. Actually, really, what you need to do is you need to alert all of Florida. Even areas up towards Tallahassee, even areas up towards where Helene made landfall. You need to make sure that everyone in this cone is aware of the situation because this is it's still 4 to 5 days out, obviously. So this is yet to change. This is going to change, and you look at how much this can change. Well, the cone is pretty much about 350 miles wide. 350-mile wide forecast cone. Okay, so much can change in this forecast cone that it's pretty much it's like hard to forecast. You can't really it's pretty much impossible to forecast. So all you got to do right now is take this as really just a signal from the National Hurricane Center that there's a high possibility, or that there's an increasing chance and possibility for a landfalling hurricane, potentially a major hurricane somewhere in Florida. All right, so this is definitely going to change. This is going to look nothing like what we're going to see at landfall. But I think that it's pretty likely that this is not going to directly hit Tampa. It could be around Tampa, and somehow the National Hurricane Center is going to get this, you know, not dead on exactly, but pretty good. I don't know. It's something that we just got to continue to watch. We just got to continue to see what the motion of the system is looking like and what the models are showing. But this continues as a hurricane throughout the rest of Florida. Brings widespread power outages through Lakeland, St. Cloud, Orlando, Spring Hill, Deltona, Palm Bay, Port St. Lucie. Everyone out here is getting hurricane force winds and wind gusts. But then by the time this makes its way over the Southwest Atlantic, all right, this becomes a post-tropical cyclone, still with Category 1 hurricane force winds at around 75 miles per hour. So still a extremely dangerous system that still can move its way throughout the Southwest Atlantic, and these waters are still very warm out here as well. So keep in mind that, we don't know at all pretty much what's going to happen after this. But at this point, we still need to figure out what this is going to do over waters, because obviously it can still re-strengthen, and that's just going to be something that we have to talk about as we get closer to this point. But this is just to give you guys a little bit of a closer view on what the current forecast is, and I just want to make it clear that this is going to change, and that we're still expected to see major changes in the forecast. All right, so we look at the GFS model for the system. We look at the latest 18Z run of the GFS. So what is it showing here? Well, it actually shows some pretty intense rapid intensification. That was kind of hard to say. But you can see here that as we get into the 7th, which should be Tuesday, Monday. This is Monday afternoon. We already have a 969 millibar low. So that is most likely a high-end Category 2, low-end Category 2, just about a Category 2 hurricane. But this is by middle of the day Monday. So we're already seeing the beginning stages of that rapid intensification, because you look back to what the GFS is showing for Sunday, and Sunday this is still a Category 1 hurricane, just about 988 millibars, and that's a very weak Category 1 hurricane. So that's really deep strengthening there. It's just the GFS just doesn't want this storm to have a hard time developing. It really looks like that there's a high chance that we're going to see some pretty quick development. But we take this out to when this hits Category 3 hurricane status, and you can see really by 8 a.m., so Wednesday, so really waking up Wednesday, we could already have a Category 3 hurricane. This is a 956 millibar low. And you're probably wondering, well, what the heck is going to happen after this? Because we all know that the 18Z run of the GFS always shows something pretty ridiculous for all hurricanes. And you'd probably think that if it has this much room to continue to strengthen, you'd probably think that this is going to be a Category 5 scenario from the GFS. Well, there's still more driving factors into the forecast of the system, because you still do have limited wind shear. There's a little bit of wind shear, not too much though. But you have a lot of dry air that's trying to get sucked into the circulation of the system. We'll talk about that in the next part of the update. But you look at what happens after this, and it does actually end up having a hard time to strengthen. It stays right around Category 3 hurricane force, which actually lines up pretty well with the National Hurricane Center's forecast, because keep in mind that if you look back at their forecast, it stays at a Category 3 hurricane within the same, pretty much same 5 mile per hour range. It stays within that range for pretty close to 24 hours. So hopefully what the GFS is showing is going to be right, and that we're going to see limited intensification. But it does get down to a 949 millibar low, which is approaching Category 4 status by the time we get into what is this? This is Thursday morning, 8 a.m. Thursday. All right, so this is not yet a Category 4 hurricane. This is probably a mid to high-end Category 3 hurricane. But keep in mind that, Helene was a high-end Category 4, and that was a 939 millibar low. So if you're at a 949, just that's a 10 millibar difference. So very, very similar to Helene. It's actually moving a little bit farther north, because remember, the National Hurricane Center has us making landfall in Tampa and kind of cutting through Florida like this. GFS continue its path. Looks like it's going to head farther north than that. So that's already a difference in the forecast. Now, I'm actually pretty surprised that that's not, just the difference. Like, I feel like usually you'd probably get a pretty drastic change in the forecast, or difference, I should say, meaning that the GFS would be way off from what the National Hurricane Center is showing, but that's actually not the case. But the GFS does bring this into the Big Bend of Florida, and it stalls out over Florida, which is a very, very hard to see kind of scenario that plays out here. But you have a 955 millibar low, so this is a weakening hurricane. But this is still a very dangerous Category 3 hurricane that makes landfall just north of Tampa, pretty much just north of where the National Hurricane Center has their forecast line of where the potential eye could go. But this is pretty much stalling out right over the Big Bend of Florida coastline here, and bam, this just brings a ton of impacts, a ton of rainfall. You've got catastrophic winds here, catastrophic flooding, storm surge, you name it. But this is bringing out millions of power outages here across Florida, and then this continues to chug eastward, and then this does get itself off the coast into the Southwest Atlantic, and the rest is we're gonna save that for future updates. But taking notes at what or just thoughts on what the GFS is showing here for the 18Z run. You can say that this is definitely not the worst case scenario, and this is actually something that would be a little bit a little bit or of a better scenario to play out, considering that the GFS usually starts out pretty bold. But the fact that it's keeping this pretty conservative is actually a pretty good sign. So still a very high chance we're going to get a Category 3 hurricane. This is still showing, keep in mind, this is still showing a major hurricane, so still nothing that you should take lightly. But it's definitely showing a little bit of a weaker scenario compared to what the GFS would normally show for this kind of system. And you look at the 12Z run from today, this is the afternoon run. You look at the difference between this run of the GFS and the 18Z run. It is pretty different. This makes landfall just a tad farther south than the 18Z GFS, and it's stronger as well. This is a 946 millibar low, which is actually stronger than the highest point that the GFS 18Z run showed. So you can basically see here the difference is that GFS 18Z has a 949 millibar low, and then the 12Z has a 946 millibar low. And basically, the lower the millibars, the stronger the storm is. So you could say that the afternoon run of the GFS is actually showing a stronger hurricane, and this makes landfall pretty much as a high-end Category 3, low-end Category 4 hurricane. So pretty much, in the high-end scale of what the National Hurricane Center is showing, and that's pretty much it. So we could look at the 60 run, but this is, keep in mind that this is before the storm strengthened, but we did have still a very high signal, a big signal here for a strong hurricane, and bam, I mean, you get a 944 millibar low. So just kind of give you guys the gist of what the GFS has been showing and latching onto as far as the signal for this. And I do think another reason of why the GFS isn't going berserk on the system is because it is only around 90 hours out. So I mean, it took a long time to develop and strengthen to the point where it's actually not that far out. And the fact that it's only 90 to 100 hours out means that it's in the short to long term. So we can actually already get into a little bit more of the specifics here with this with the potential impacts of the system. So you look at now. The humidity here that the GFS is showing, this is showing us how dry or how warm the air is. How dry or how saturated the air is. So basically showing us where there's moisture, where there's drier. So just starting out with the current setup of the system. These are the current steering and driving conditions. You've got a big area here of dry air. This is all dry air. that is north of the Gulf of Mexico here, or at least the Gulf Coast, and then you've got a ton of moisture that's getting pulled all the way east into Florida and pretty much out ahead of Milton. And so you see what happens as we can put this forward. You can see that this dry air wants to move farther south. It's really strong, right? This is very very dry air. This is unsaturated air that's trying to push its way farther south. I believe this would be associated with the cold front. So this would kill off Milton. All right, if you didn't have this abundant amount of moisture ahead of Milton, we would see a huge difference in what the impacts, as far as what the impacts that are expected to look like. But basically, what we would see is we'd see a probably a very weak tropical storm at best here, because it's only going to have a little bit of time to strengthen before this cold and dry air kind of undercuts the system. But you can see that pushing this forward, it actually does try to go a little bit farther south because this cold air, this dry air is trying to push it farther south and keep it farther south. And it's basically just not going to like that, Milton, and it's just going to want to move south away from that dry and cold air. Now, it's already a 973 millibar low, so I think that at this point, it's probably strong enough to withstand a certain amount of dry air, getting pulled into it. So if it's already a 973 millibar low, which is probably a Category 1, Category 2 hurricane, then it's probably able to withstand all of this dry air that's trying to get wrapped into the core of Milton. So you see what happens as we take this a little bit farther forward, and that's pretty much exactly what happens. It fights off all this dry air, which gets pushed on the backside of the system. This dry air is just, it literally looks like it's stacking on top of each other and just gets so dense here, just really, really dense, almost like dusty air, it feels like. I mean, it's just super dry air. That's all it is. And unsaturated air. But then you've got a very, very rich environment ahead of Milton, and that's why Milton's just going to be moving right into this area because number one, the steering currents. Look at this. This flow is literally west to east, perfectly west to east here. So that's just going to perfectly allow Milton to just shift its way over to the east and over towards Florida. So that's what we see here as we push this into play, and it does strengthen, but you can actually start to see the beginning stages of this dry air starting to get pulled slowly but surely into the core of Milton, and it's actually surprising because Milton gets stronger at this point, now down to a 949 millibar low, but this is its strongest point. It's going to start to go on to the downward trend after this, and boom, this is where you start to see the dry air find its weakness, and it fills up the Gulf of Mexico and then starts to really try to get itself wrapped into the cyclonic flow of Milton as it makes landfall. So that's basically a driving factor of how strong the storm's going to get. Also depends on how long it's going to stay over waters, because you look at the sea surface temperature. The sea surface temperatures here. I'll zoom in here to the Western Atlantic, and basically you can see here right now you've got sea surface temperatures right around 30 degrees Celsius. So they've actually cooled down just a tad. But still near record-breaking sea surface temperatures out here, even in the Southwest Atlantic. So very dangerous conditions out there for the system. The system definitely has the potential to do a lot of damage. And that brings us to our next segment of the video, because you need to look at the possible worst-case scenarios. Now, I'm showing you the HWRF model because what we saw with Helene is pretty much a great example of why we should definitely not ignore the hurricane models. The GFS was beginning to stay conservative at the very last point, about 2 days before landfall, and there was still a question mark between if we were going to see a Category 4 hurricane or Category 5 hurricane. And now the HWRF, or really Category 3 hurricane, I should say, but the HWRF stayed strong and continued to show a Category 4, Category 5 scenario, while the GFS was only showing a Category 3 scenario about 2 days prior to landfall. And the HWRF, regardless of what happened with the main models, the global models, the major models, the HWRF stayed to its gut and continued to show and produce the strong hurricane scenarios here, and that's what we saw with Helene. We saw high in Category 4 hurricanes. So the fact that some of the major models are showing weaker scenarios, but the hurricane models are showing stronger ones, that doesn't necessarily mean that the hurricane models are overdoing it. That could just mean that they're actually showing the more reasonable scenario, and that the global models are just surprisingly, underdoing it. So that's what we see here potentially uh, um, oh my gosh, can't believe I forgot it. Milton. And this is what we see with Milton here, and you can see the HWRF really starting to strengthen this a lot quicker than the GFS. And you already get this down to a 941 millibar low by Monday. Okay, this is very, very concerning intensification that you see here. This is by Monday evening already a high-end Category 4 hurricane. This is just 3 millibars higher than what we saw with Helene at its point, at its highest point. And this is not done. This is still strengthening. It's a 935 millibar low north of Cuba, and Florida is nowhere to be seen. So it's still got a lot of time to stay over waters, and it's developing a well-defined eye here, and it's just doing its thing over the Gulf of Mexico, really gearing up for that landfall. And this gets down to a 934 millibar low. So this is probably a low end Cat 5, high end Cat 4 hurricane. Easily a worst case scenario here, but you just always got to relate this to Helene, because this is almost exactly what we saw with Helene, where we saw a worst case scenario and we were like, there's no way that's going to happen. This model is just, overdoing it by a lot. And turns out that was wrong. So that's why we need to pay attention to this. But and not to scare anybody, but I mean, this does continue to maintain its strength, and it deepens a little bit just before landfall. It's still 934 millibar low, so still probably a Category 4, high in Category 4, low in Category 5. And then it makes landfall here north of Tampa, agreeing with the GFS here, disagreeing with the National Hurricane Center, as a 948 millibar low just about on Thursday night. Or actually, this will be Wednesday night. So about Wednesday, 8 p.m. is where we see landfall here. So just after dinner time here on Wednesday, you get lashed with tropical storm bands here on the north side of Florida. All right, this would bring tornadoes, a lot of spin ups with this. This would just bring a lot of power outages, a lot of gusty winds. Then obviously they've got that really tight core, really tight eye wall, this extremely dangerous system here. Just nothing you want to see. So, excuse me. So, very concerning runs from the HWRF, from the hurricane models here. And the 12Z run did show a little bit of a stronger scenario, did deepen this down to a 923 millibar low, which is easily a Category 5 hurricane. And then this makes landfall just as pretty much a really high in Cat 4, low in Cat 5. So HWRF and the major hurricane models really starting to major hurricane models, meaning the more popular hurricane models, not to be mistaken with the term major hurricane for Cat 3 plus, but you know what I mean. So basically, just got to take away from this is that this is looking kind of similar to what we saw with the setup for Helene. Not to scare anybody, this is by all means, this is not me telling you that we're going to see another Helene-like situation unfold. But I just want to break this down for you guys as best as possible, and as soon as possible, just so that we don't see another Helene kind of situation unfold. So. Moving on here to Hurricane Kirk. We're gonna leave Milton out of the way for now. We're gonna talk about it in tomorrow's update. But now we got to move on to Kirk, because Kirk, right now it's not impacting land. It's not even close to land. It's just out there spinning in the North Atlantic. But it is expected to move over towards Europe, which is completely on the other side of the Atlantic, and it's an area that can sometimes get hit by tropical cyclones. It's very rare. Usually gets hit by ex-tropical cyclones, after they do their thing in the Western Atlantic, or sometimes in the United States. But we are now expecting a Kirk to still be a named storm and impact parts of Europe. So you look at it right now, it's still a very strong Category 3 hurricane, I believe, with a pretty good eye and eye wall there. So just a really strong system. But you look at the cone here, and the cone, it's very, very big, very long here. It looks pretty snaky. But you could see by 2 a.m. Tuesday, we're expecting this to still be a high-end tropical storm, because by Monday, 2 p.m., this is still a hurricane. By 2 p.m. Tuesday, it's still a tropical storm. And then look at this. It moves its way all the way over towards where even is this, like Poland, and south of Ireland, south of the UK, and it makes a landfall. This is a technical landfall in Europe as a tropical storm by 2 p.m. Wednesday, and this is continuing to move farther to the east, and this gets its way all the way into Germany. And I mean, this just keeps going; it never stops. But this would bring really intense winds. I know, there's a separate term. People like to use different weather terms out there. But you could definitely call this a cyclone out there. This is going to be a windstorm. But this would bring a lot of a lot of tropical rainfall and a lot of strong winds. So that's why we gotta mention this. Because there is a concern for some potential hazardous impacts, but there is a potential for a tropical storm to impact Poland and Spain, and the rest of Europe. So that's all I got for you guys. Thank you for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. I apologize for being a little bit slow in my speech there. Gotta get back in the groove of things. It's a lesson that I always have to learn. Whenever you take a break like this, you always are going to start off your first video after being on break is always going to be bad with your commentary. And that's what's happened for pretty much all of my years of, doing weather updates. So, I apologize for doing that. Just, trying to get as much out as I can. But, continue to keep you guys posted on what we see out here. In the Atlantic, and I'll keep you guys posted on what we see with the latest information on Milton. All right, but just looks like a very concerning system. Keep our eyes on it. But yeah, that's all I got. So thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.